Hey everybody, welcome to the Project for Healing Humanity World Vigil for Trafficking Victims. Actually, this is our second vigil, so we're going to do a Q&A session. You can try to put through your questions for us on using Twitter, and you can if you check different pages, we're logged in as like in Ark of Hope for Children or in Removing Chains. You can use the #World Vigil hashtag, and we'll be able to follow you on there. So welcome. We're sorry we're late. We ran into all sorts of technical difficulties and illness difficulties. So right, Dan, we've been through it today.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we're here. I'm going to introduce the two of us. There's supposed to be five of us, but we've been through quite a few different things. Fernanda Mejia is the host of and founder of Project for Healing Humanity. She can't be on tonight, so I'm going to act as the host. I'm Blair Corbett with Ark of Hope for Children and removingchains.org. I'll explain more about myself later. We were going to have Jerome Elam, who is a journalist for the Washington Times, and he's a great guy. He's a survivor himself, if you saw the first vigil that we had. But as it turns out, he's very sick with borderline pneumonia. We appreciate your prayers for Dan, and we thank him for all that he's done. Not Dan, for all that he's done to help us. Also, the last one is Sherna Benjamin, who was going to be on from Trinidad and Tobago, but she had an emergency come up at the last minute, trying to help some children actually that were caught up in a prostitution ring down there. So she couldn't be here, so we'll share a little bit about Sherna later. But I'm Blair Corbett. I want to introduce Dan Benedict. Dan is from the Defenders Convention. So Dan, you can share some about what Defenders Convention does, and we'll just go from there. We'll answer questions that people had given us before. Fire away. Dan?
There you are. Okay. The screen froze for a second. Well, as you said, I'm Dan Benedict with the Defender Foundation, and I am the founder and current director of the SHIELD teams. The Defender Foundation is an anti-human trafficking NGO, and we have multiple chapters forming across the U.S. Right now, currently, we have a chapter in Jacksonville, Florida, and in Seattle, Washington, and we just had meetings for the San Diego chapter, and the Baltimore chapter is about to have their meeting towards the end of this month. We also have other chapters forming in Colorado and Ohio, just trying to basically touch the hot spots. When Defender makes a chapter, we are not just out to put a dot on a map somewhere. We put a chapter there when there are like-minded people we believe can support their operations to actually fight trafficking in their backyard. Because it is in the backyards here in the U.S., in the land of the free, as much as many other parts around the world. So it is a wide type of response that we do. Some people ask, why don't you concentrate on maybe one part of trafficking? And the answer to that is because I have a lot of volunteers, and they have a lot of different jobs and skill sets, and they have the passion for this. And if I can fight the front on all battles, we're going to fight, period. We're not going to sit people out on the sidelines. So we have our awesome chapters, which do a lot of great volunteer work, working with local shelters, getting them clothing and toiletry items, things of this nature. We have a legislation team. We have a victim aftercare team. We have a lot of great things that you can actually do hands-on and volunteer to do work besides just spreading the word about how bad it is and going on about your business. And then, of course, there's my side where I head tactical teams which actually go and physically retrieve the victims from where they are held. We do this both stateside and overseas. This is a controlled type of process. We work heavily with law enforcement. Not to say that law enforcement invites us with open arms a lot of times, but the invitation is definitely there, and it is our goal that every rescue results in a prosecution. We really want to put an end to this. So part of that is addressing the demand side, and that's when I speak to men about the demand side and hold them responsible for their actions. That's part of it. And of course, the other part is we need these prosecutions on the traffickers themselves, because we need to increase the risk versus the reward in this industry. And right now, there is not enough risk versus the reward they're getting. And anything we can do to increase that risk for them, to increase the jail time, fines, compensations, all this type of thing is going to net something that people don't want to get into. And that's, we want to make it as unattractive as possible to sell children. And that's the basic, period dot of that. What kind of questions do you have for me? I can't hear you.
I know. I had myself muted, so I didn't interrupt you.
Excellent.
Well, as I said, I'll introduce myself a little bit. That way we'll get down the road.
All right, sounds good.
I'm Blair Corbett in the Ark of Hope for Children. We've been involved in helping child abuse victims for many years. We had all kinds of things that we were attempting to do with child abuse victims involving foster care and all. And then about 5 years ago, we had some individuals find us online, because we're online in so many different places. And it was very interesting because we've been helping child abuse victims for years, but I had our first trafficking victims locate us online, and 5 years ago, as I said, and it was very eye-opening for me. I didn't know, well, these particular ones had been through sex trafficking and ritual abuse. And I had never been exposed to any of these. So it was quite an eye-opening experience, and has been for the last few years. Now we've been working with trafficking victims in the U.S. and Canada, the United Kingdom, and South America, and various places. It's really, really an incredible thing. So Ark of Hope for Children recently started Removing Chains, a live chat help site, if you will, to support victims and help bring them to be survivors, help them to hang on, help them to give a reason, and bring them hope. So removingchains.org started pretty recently, but we've got quite a few different survivors that we're helping on there. So that's what Ark of Hope for Children's role has been. We're going to be working closely with Dan Benedict, or Defenders Foundation, and others, because our ultimate goal is to build some homes to house trafficking victims and or survivors. I'd rather say survivors, because there's such a drastic need. So here's where I thought we'd share some of the things about trafficking, in case you're on and you haven't known really that it's such a big deal. Recently, the Global Report on Human Trafficking, or Trafficking in Persons, came out for 2012. This just came out in November from the United Nations, and so I wanted to point out a few of these things that they had on here, just to give people an eye on what's going on. They say 27% of all victims detected globally are children. Of every 3 victims, 2 are girls and 1 is a boy. something we talked about on the last vigil is, we rarely talk about the boys. Well, we're going to do some things about that. We want to help them, and they're not being ignored. This is important. This particular report that came up on the United Nations, because as it says in the report, the collection of data for this report was gathered using approximately 55,000 victims worldwide and 50,000 offenders that were detected around the world. Now, see, here's the thing. We've had people, and Dan, I know, can attest to this, that have come up and said that, well, it's all being made up. Well, if it's being made up, how come there's all these victims? And how come there's all these offenders that have been captured? And they've been able to get some of this information from them. It's estimated, I believe, Dan, that there's, is it 32 million victims of trafficking worldwide? Is that not the case?
I just heard that statistic myself, actually, yes. And that's, I think, when they're counting in various types of labor trafficking where the people enter voluntarily into the agreement. But even taking that out, it's still in the 20s of millions.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, this is the thing that I want people to get from this paper that the UN came out with, and then I'm going to put it down. But it said trafficking for sexual exploitation is more common in Europe, Central Asia, and the Americas. Trafficking for forced labor is more frequently detected in Africa and the Middle East, as well as in the South and East Asia and the Pacific. Trafficking, this gets ignored. Trafficking for the removal of organs has been detected in 16 countries in all regions of the world. It's just phenomenal what we find out when we open our eyes and we read the things that are out there. But this vigil and Project for Healing Humanity is focused much on sexual abuse that people have faced. So we'll leave with this statistics. Trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation accounts for 58% of all trafficking cases detected globally. Now, we already discussed before that a large portion of those are children. 25% of those at least are figured to be children. And if the reports vary, whether it's 27 million victims or 32 or million or whatever, but if 25% of the 32 million or even 27 million survivors are children, that is an enormous amount. That's an unacceptable amount. But here's some things I want to share with you all, and then Dan and I are going to get into questions. And you can ask more questions if you're using Twitter, if you type them using #WorldVigil. But listen to these, Dan. And people who say that this is happening, yes, so I've heard about it in the world, but not in the United States, right? Recently, a report came out, this is just from January 4th, where 245 were arrested in the U.S. In a U.S.-led child sexual abuse operation. And this report came out, it says, an international operation led by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement aimed at child porn and sexual abuse resulted in the arrest of 245 suspects. And here's the thing I want people to pay attention to. All but 23 of the suspects were apprehended in the United States. People don't want to think it's here, and they don't want to think it's in the UK or in their country. The agency said that during the course of Operation Sunflower, law enforcement officers identified 123 victims of child exploitation and removed 44 of those children from their abusers, alleged abusers. And it goes on as to why they only rescued 44, but a lot of them, the victims in that were not recovered yet, or they were not living with family, things like that. But down in the article it says several of the children were shockingly young. people please pay attention to this, because they're thinking that, you know, these people are that are victims are teenagers or older women, and that. It says several of the children were shockingly young. 5 were under age 3. 9 were between the ages of 4 and 6. Of the 123 victims, 110 lived in the United States, in 19 different states. I've got another one here. People say that trafficking, sex trafficking with the United States only happens on the coast, right, Dan? It comes in on all the coastlines. Another article that came out on December 10th of 2012 has 12 that were arrested in a Colorado child sex trafficking sting. This was a statewide child sex trafficking ring that they went in and went after. It says juvenile girls were posted for sale on Backpage.com and available to Johns. You know, these are the guys who want to pay for the girls, and the pimps are the ones that are selling them or renting them. Excuse me. Yeah, they were made available on Backpage.com, made available to Johns for sex acts. According to the Attorney General, 4 of the known Johns are in custody, and the underage girls are receiving treatment in undisclosed locations. As I said, Arc of Hope for Children would like to build one of those undisclosed locations ourselves, because one of the reports that the UN and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had said just last year that the biggest need for these victims, once they're rescued, is a safe place to harbor them and keep them, but help them get through all the different things they've been through, which includes PTSD and all those sorts of things. So, but in honor of Sherna Benjamin, who asked, who couldn't be here, she asked me to share cases in Latin America and the Caribbean that she shared. She asked me to let people know that according to statistics of Latin American Institute for Education and Communication, some 23,400 girls and young children were victims of illegal adoptions in Guatemala just in the last decade down there. It also says that child prostitution is a major problem in Brazil, where some 500,000 children work as prostitutes. So that's enough of the new statistics and the things that we wanted to bring to open people's eyes today. But this is, I hope you will share your questions. I'm going to watch and see if anybody posts new questions on Pound World Vigil. Again, I'm sorry we were late, but I'll start in with the questions. Dan, I've had to put my my camera aside so I can't see myself, so I'm just going to read these questions. But is Tracy on with you, Dan?
She's here, yes. We had some microphone feedback.
Those issues.
So we'll unmute and mute differently to me, so we don't have feedback.
I will let you decide who answers what or anything like that. But I would like to make it so that you guys field the questions first, unless it's specifically for Arc of Hope for Children. So the first question we have is from Deborah Parks. And either one of you can answer, or both. By the way, Tracy is here. She's also with the Defender Foundation, correct?
Yes, she is. She's a sitting board member as well.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you, Tracy. I apologize. Okay, well, the first question is from Deborah Park. And she asked, what is the world going to do to protect their women and children? Obviously, as it relates to child trafficking or sex trafficking. So go ahead. Who wants to see it?
You want me to do that? Okay. Basically, as a world, that's a pretty generous game plan right there. Problem is, this is such a huge force. It's the number one, or it's neck and neck with the drug trade right now as the number one criminal enterprise in the world. And one of the things we have to face is that sometimes what we may perceive as our values are not necessarily the values of another country as well, or their values are compromised by poverty, by need, and various other factors. Some families, even in some countries, look upon their girl children as having money in the bank. If they don't have a son to carry on the family name, they do have a child that they can sell. Now, as far as how we could fight this as a world, I mean, there's different things that the UN has agreed upon as far as coming together as a world body. And of course, there you have some of the Palermo Accords that address human trafficking on a worldwide basis. And there are certain countries that have accepted certain standards, and then that's why you have the TIPS report that comes out each year and talks about which countries still have a long, long way to go as far as prosecuting human trafficking laws. But in getting anything enforced, as far as human rights issues, it really takes a unified body. And the only way I can really see anything go through in today's jaded society is that there has to be money behind this somewhere. Money has to pay for fighting human trafficking. So if we enacted some sort of legislation and we get other countries on board where we can seize assets, things of this nature, that taking money away from the traffickers, and at this point, I mean, they're talking, it's a commodity. They're talking, these victims are nothing more than currency to them. And we have to increase that risk, and we have to, versus the reward they get from it. And we have to take away the rewards, and we have to put this to a point where no one wants to do it. It's just not profitable, even to the most jaded people. Now, we got rid of slavery to a certain point in the world a while back, and various countries, you know, had to get on board, and they had to meet with that, and they had to decide what were the standards of, you know, treating your fellow brother in humanity. And is slavery wrong at its base? Even though different cultures allow it, is it right? And that is where I've had a culture argument against me before by people who traveled the world and people I've respected, and they tell me, you know, it's just their culture. It's been going on for thousands of years. Why in the world would you try to impose your values on them? Well, I'm sorry, but certain cultures, and I'm going to have to be narrow-minded, I don't believe you should sell children. I don't believe children should be sexually exploited. I think there are some lines that have to be drawn to retain our humanity. And, I mean, there's a culture out there right now where young boys are broken in as warriors as young as 4 years old by the men in the tribe. I don't know what happened at what point back in their history where they had, you know, some chieftain that kind of got this going and it became part of their culture. But, you know, something's wrong there. Everyone has basic instincts in them to protect children. I believe that's put in there as a purpose. I believe just as men should have a natural mandate of sorts to be a protector, to be a defender. And we betray that when we not only victimize children, but when we allow it to happen as well. And I believe that we just can't let this keep happening. Now, as far as a worldwide attack, it's kind of a long way of saying we have a long way to go. As far as actually getting anyone to do stuff, it's going to take pressure. You have to do pressure on countries, and whether that's by trade restrictions, it all comes down to money. Somehow, the country is going to have to get on board to fight trafficking. It's going to have to hurt them financially not to do so. And in the end, somehow we're going to have to make this not profitable for traffickers, and that's what we have to come up with. And I don't have all the answers, but hopefully someone out there, maybe they haven't even joined Defender or Ark of Hope or any of this, maybe they do have something formulating. And right now we're attacking this on many different fronts, but maybe the best ideas are yet to come. And that is one of the reasons why we need absolutely everybody to take a stand and get involved.
Yeah, that's true. We do. We've got about 15 questions, I'd say, and another one just came in on Twitter. But so I'm just going to ask them, but in the order they came, and hopefully we won't have duplication. But Dan, I think you talked about different things that are going on. Federal law enforcement are they doing a lot to help? They are, correct?
Well, they are. However, human trafficking, I would say, and I've heard this said before, and I agree, is somewhere like, as far as in the U.S., is somewhere like domestic violence was in the 70s. People know it's a problem. They're not quite sure. This is as far as law enforcement's view. They know it's a problem. They're not quite sure how big it is, and they're not quite sure how to fight it. And they're experimenting. And back in the day, we had a lot of sheriff's officers and deputies, policemen that would go to a domestic dispute, and they would pretty much blow it off and say, well, you should have cooked them dinner, or, hey, man, keep it down. We don't want to have to come out here again. If you make us come out here again, someone's going to jail. And this is why there's some woman bruised and beaten there, sobbing on the couch. It can't happen. Now, there's guidelines in place where they come, they see results of some sort of combat, someone's going to jail. It's just how it is. And we have to make our laws where something has to happen. Now, federally, a lot of states have passed some great legislation here recently. California, Washington State, and Florida here recently with the Safe Harbor Act. So the federal government is definitely getting involved. As far as the law enforcement agencies themselves, the FBI is doing a lot, but they're also really wrapped up in fighting, drugs and terror and, things of that nature. And same with a lot of the other agencies. It comes down to funding. There is not a lot of funding to fight human trafficking. Here we have Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Transportation. Their jurisdiction covers pretty much everything. From air, land, sea. If it travels on it, it's under their jurisdiction. And they're wanting to join in, but they're really not doing much right now. And it all really comes down to funding. We're putting our funding into so many other different types of things. And I'm not saying that making sure that we have dangerous items being imported from other countries as just fake products of different types. That's not important, because it is. But I really think that when you're talking about shuttling children to be sexually abused across the country, I think we should put some sort of priority on that, and some sort of priority of funding as well. So federally, we're in the beginning stages. I have federal agencies that have reached out to us. So they're definitely wanting to do something about it, but coordinated effort, it's still coming, and we still have a long way to go, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, one other person had a question that just had come through on that, Dan and Tracy, and I'm not sure if you know the answer, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Is there any group or law enforcement that monitors comments made to kids online? I don't think they can do that, can they?
To a point. There is no central force that I know of. I do know there's certain groups that have cyber stings, as they call them, and some of them monitor different things, but the amount of boards and chat rooms on the internet are just massive. And again, it comes down to funding, where we have police departments cutting funding for so many different things, and that's going. They're trying to police their communities. They're trying to put officers on the streets. So even though this is fighting crime, their budgets have been cut, and we can get a grant possibly, in a different area, and part of that goes to law enforcement. But I know personally we were involved with a victim that was contacted us through the internet who had no idea where they were at. They were forced to do webcam shows. Her and these other girls were being held captive. But you know what? It was after 5 o'clock, and I could not find anyone that was open to help track down their IP number where they were at while they were still on. I couldn't do it from the local office because it was after 5 and they were gone. I won't mention the federal agency that I contacted, or several of them, but it was like, leave a message and we'll get back with you. And it was like, no, this is imperative. This is now. We do need something central like that. Now there are various charities, and we're one that's looking at how to get some people on that can help monitor. But truthfully, even if we have people full-time doing that, it's going to be a drop in the well. There are so many of these chat rooms, so many of them out there. There's just no way to monitor them all, unless we did some massive computer keyword thing, which then comes down to what kind of invasion of privacy do we have. So it's a fine line between freedom and finding these people.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, the freedom thing going on, and I don't know. I know, at least as far as chat rooms like removing chains, the Ark of Hope chat room to help victims and stuff, we're well monitored there. I know other places that are attempting to do the same things, they are monitored. Unfortunately, most really aren't monitoring a chat, especially like Facebook and the messengers and things like that. So people have to be, really, really, really careful. Dan, I'm sure you've run into it, but I've run into it in a huge way to see where, there's so much child porn available right through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I know just shut down a whole bunch of sites. It's really, really phenomenal. I'm not sure where that noise is coming from, but anyhow, it really is phenomenal. But we have another question, and this let's see, leads right into that. Sandy Scott had asked. This is kind of a long question, but sex trafficking ads and posts are appearing regularly on websites like Backpage.com and one called Topics with an X. Yet nothing is being done about that. Tons of people have been on after Backpage, and they refuse to do a thing, as well as with Topics. They want to argue free speech, even when it involves an illegal activity. When is more heat going to be put on these types of sites? Well, I don't think we can answer that in this Vigil. You'd have to talk to people on a federal level. But there's all those rights that people say that they have, freedom of speech and freedom of expression and all of that. As far as those of us on this Vigil and the rest that we're going to be here, we're all appalled by it. We think if it were up to us, those places will be shut down. I know there's some people that are big on trying to make that happen, for especially Backpage and any of the others that were doing it. I wish they would just stop on their own, but they won't. But it isn't just Backpage. It's happening all over the internet. There were stories of people being lured, young people being lured using Facebook and live video and things like that. Right, Dan? Do you have any more input on that, Dan or Tracy?
I want to see if I can mute. Hold on a second.
I just muted. You good.
Sorry I haven't answered anything because I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you hear me, Blair?
I can hear you.
Oh, see, now I can't hear you. Well, I'm going to just talk over you. I don't know if you're talking. I'm sorry. A couple of things with the Backpage and stuff. It's very tricky because they teach these girls to lie about their age. There's a couple other things I wanted to mention was the global report on trafficking. There's a report of 155 countries that has been posted, And it's amazing. I was in Europe earlier this year, and I could see the whole live broadcast of this right in Europe, and here we are in the United States, and we don't even hear anything about it. It's kind of hard to answer some of these questions when we get them immediately. What was the other question that you had answered? I had another answer to one of the questions that were up, and I don't know which one it was. So I'm going to mute myself, and then maybe I'll like break in when I get a chance.
Well, if I can refresh your memory, Tracy, maybe it was about federal law enforcement, you know, what people are doing to protect the children. What I think is great now, as far as that's concerned, at least, is, you know, the different governments. A lot of them are getting more involved. The United Nations is involved. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is working with quite a few different countries and stuff and trying to do things. But is that the people are involved. You got local organizations and ministries and that involved. And I think that's a really exciting component. And fortunately, our governments are willing to work with those nonprofit organizations and NGOs and others that are starting up around the world to try to address things in one fashion or another, whether it's direct care or emotional care or awareness and all of that. So that's a really great thing. Did any of that make you think of what you were going to say, Tracy?
Yes. Sorry. What you were talking about there with the who's monitoring the children online and who's contacting them. What I've found is that the parents might hire a private investigator, and then that's how sometimes here there's a little bit of online monitoring, but not much. I mean, I don't know of any organization that's continuously monitoring this, unless there's just suspicions or somebody sees something and actually reports it. And then even then it's a question mark whether or not it's going to be monitored. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Tracy. Somebody asked, I would like to know if the FBI or others have trained individuals that roam the airports or other means of transportation in an effort to intercept kids before they're shipped out or sent away. What do you guys have to say about that?
I'll take that. For one, I don't know, would be straight out, but I will say that most law enforcement agencies are reactive in nature. They react to a crime, they react to a tip. It's not much prevention really is being done. Now we'll monitor our coast and we'll monitor shipping and stuff like that, but I really don't see too many people going around the transportation hubs, and I know that's going to be changing soon. And there may be a certain amount of that in high-risk areas right now, but not that I'm aware of. And if I'm not aware of it, hopefully the bad guys aren't as well, and hopefully something's being done to help curb them. But yes, I think it's absolutely needed that certain areas, such as our ports and our rail hubs and our airports, definitely, they're being transported through there. We definitely need something that, you know, even if it's just the staff train more on what to look for, which is starting to happen. You know, that needs to be enacted more and more. And we ourselves have different training PowerPoint presentations for like the entertainment industry and hotel staff and things of that nature. So I'm sure there's different things for people involved in different transportation areas. It just really needs to get out because a lot of people may know something's wrong, but they may not have the training to ascertain that exactly what it is.
Yeah, man, that's a really good point. As far as the general public is concerned, you know, I wanted to share something that we will put right on this video once it's recorded. That there's a great resource. There's quite a few good resources out there, but there's one right now which gives people an idea how to spot victims of trafficking, and it's done by our government. And it's really is a great resource to get people more or less aware. What am I really looking for? What's really happening out there? It's called the Human Trafficking Awareness Training. And if you want to look that up in on your browser or in your search, it's available right from our government. But that's one thing. You know, we're doing this all right now because this is Human Trafficking Awareness Week, if you will. And even that is a big deal in a sense, because just a few years ago, people didn't even know what human trafficking was. Right, Dan and Tracy? Is just, you know, I'm just glad that we've got organizations like Dan's, like Defenders Foundation, that's on the spot. That we're not just leaning on our governments and our people. I mean, and everything to try to deal with the situations. But let's go on with another question. Dan, this is an interesting one that I thought we could all have some input on, perhaps. But Roger Shane asked, I would like to know what specific bits of data and information NGOs or, you know, non-governmental organizations or nonprofit organizations and others use when they're deciding to start a project and how to design it. He went on basically what sort of family and community demographics and other details are important to them in their decision of where and how to work. That's a loaded question. I can do it again in pieces or whatever, but what do you think about that? I know you started Defender Foundation. So tell us about it.
Well, the Defender Foundation was a full year in the planning before we actually pulled the trigger and incorporated, because there are just so many different facets of it, and the type of organization that we are, where we pioneered this thing called active activism, where we have our volunteers not just doing fundraising and not just spreading awareness, but taking that logical step after telling someone about how horrible it is. Then the next question is, well, what are we going to do about it? And we wanted to give people options, physical things that they could be involved on how to actually do something about it. Now, that being said, we did look at the problem areas, and we are headquartered out of Florida, but depending on which publication you read, Florida is definitely one of the top 5, but it's one of the top 2 or 3 importers of human trafficking victims. Much less we are a destination state for many runaways who end up being victimized into trafficking. And just because of how we have a warm state, it's people can want to see we have more coastline than any other state in the country. So there's just a lot of attraction there for at-risk youth and others that are victimized. So Florida seems a very logical place for us to operate out of. Now, when we start a chapter, we look at different aspects. We look at what kind of ports do they have, what kind of trafficking problems are they already seeing, and we already know that if there are already reported signs of human trafficking, it's usually much more than what most people are seeing. And you can just multiply that for all the ones that aren't being, caught. And just like, you were just reading that article about, all the people that were busted in that sting, 245 people or so. Of those 245, those are the people they could actually get the goods on. There are much more than that in any case, and that's just how criminal cases work. There's usually a lot more involved. It's rare that you can get a net that just catches everybody. So we look at the factors as far as that. And we also look at what instances on port activity is there illegal activity going under. What kind of presence at the port do we have of organized crime? Different things like that facilitate smuggling, and whether it be of products or people. And those are the hot spots we look for. Now, like you just mentioned how, it doesn't even take a port. there in Colorado. We had a huge thing going on there, and yes, we were partnering with a great organization called Joy International. Dr. Jeff Brodsky is the founder of that, and he has done a lot of rescues overseas in the past 30 years with that organization. And here it is. They found out that we have a huge and horrible problem here in the United States, and they are going to be attacking it on their home ground. So here we have a place where we have reported activity. People look into it, and you find out that there's more even than what's reported, and then we need to do something about it. So that's where we put a chapter. And just like Seattle with their ports, Seattle made the record, not on the state-wise, but as the city during a FBI sting had the most minors involved in prostitution during the sting, which of course is child trafficking. So Seattle is actually a logical place to put a chapter, and that's where we put our first chapter outside of our headquarters. So there's just a lot of factors that come to that, and we want to put it in a place where we're going to be effective, and we're trying to put it where we have a network where if we do have a SHIELD team there at that chapter, not all of the chapters are going to have SHIELD teams, but if we have a SHIELD team there, they can operate into a 3-state radius and help project retrievals all around them. And hopefully I would like even just a rumor of one of our teams out to cost people money. They start pulling their girls off the streets. And we have a long ways to get there, but it's going to happen. And I mean, everyone right now who gets involved with any of our organizations is on the ground floor of helping build something that is going to help these girls and boys, and is going to help eventually. Our goal is to end it. I don't think it's an impossible goal. It just has to be done.
Yeah. You know what? I want to say something to who was it? Roger Shane that asked that question. I think you've got to look at what it is you think you would like to do as a person or as the individuals that are banding together that are talking about it. Do you want to raise awareness? Perhaps you want to do something that raises funding or for an organization that's already out there and doing some things. Perhaps you want to do something that as you look through and you do Google searches, you find out some other organizations are already doing it. They may want to have a chapter or whatever in your area. They may want to partner with you. I would say most of the organizations that are out there doing anything are more than happy to share information with you for whatever it is that you want to do, even if you do want to do it on your own. This is a huge problem, and unless we all work together and share information we have, it's just not going to get dealt with well enough. I know, as Dan said, there's rescues happening, whether by organizations like his, like Defender Foundation, or governmental organizations. There's people being saved, but there's not enough bed space for them. There's bed space for these. I say there's bed space. They can put these kids in juvenile detention. They can put them in foster care, as Florida has decided they want to do. But again, that's just bed space. What about their trauma? What about the things that they face? Will they even stay in mom and pop's foster home, or will they just run away? If you want to start something, you've got to look at what it is you want to start, I believe, and then look for some other organizations that are doing something similar, and most of them, I believe, would be willing to help in whatever fashion. So, but that was a loaded question, and a good question. Okay, I had somebody from the UK, Anna Braga, asked a couple questions of Ark of Hope for Children, and I wanted to say, this is a world, Vigil. We're talking a lot right now about the United States because we're all happen to be in the United States. But Dan could speak about, and probably will before this is done, about efforts that they've taken, Defender Foundation has taken in other countries outside the United States. I know trafficking is a big deal in as the UN report that we read said, all over the world, and also in Europe, and of course in the UK. So Anna Braga asked, how are plans progressing for a UK presence for the effort that Arc of Hope for Children is doing, what we call removingchains.org? That's a live chat victim and survivor support site. And that's something that's been really phenomenal, how I believe that God has just brought it up over the years when are helping people online. It's really phenomenal how people are so willing to open up their hearts since they can't see us face to face. And we're able to help draw out some things out of them to bring them more to a place of hope and stuff. And we're able to do that with people that live, here I am in Florida, and they're in Canada or UK or Australia or whatever, South America, and it's really phenomenal, thanks to the technologies and things that we have now. So we're able to do translations through the site, to talk to people, whatever it happens to be. Well, we were talking with this Anna about trying to get volunteers that are willing to try to be listening mentors on our site and make themselves available in all the different time zones. If we could get people on that were willing to try to do that in the evenings for a couple nights a week, a couple hours, let's say, on a couple nights a week, in the evenings in their different time zone, and for instance, maybe on the weekends, whatever, we would get a 24-hour clock covered. And we'd be able to help people, whether it's child abuse, sexual abuse, male or female abuse, and of course with sex trafficking. So that's a way that some people may be able to, or maybe want to get involved. There are definitely ways to help, because a lot of these kids, a lot of these people are finding, beds. They're finding, they're getting out in whatever way they're getting out, but they don't know what to do now. So that's one of the ways that we can help. But we're moving forward with efforts in the UK and across Europe to try to get a bunch of people that'll be online in the European and UK time zones. So we're moving forward with that. We feel that's the best way that we can help as far as the trafficking efforts over there, at least. So thanks, Anna, for your question. Those are our goals for the UK, anyhow, as she had asked. And if it ever came about where we could do, once we build our home here, if we could do homes elsewhere, South America, UK, whatever God has planned for us, we'll step up to do that. And I think, as Dan showed, Dan, you've done things in other countries through Defenders. You want to share a little bit about what countries?
Sure. We've done operations in Dominican Republic, and we've had representatives of ours have gone to places like Nicaragua. But they went more as personal trips, and we got to hear about their activities when they got back. But we're scouting out a few different places, and of course we're just beginning. We're not saying we're the experts at this, or we're the greatest rescue team that ever lived, but we are going to be faithful to our calling and do what we believe we've been called to do. Now, we do have plans for start in the UK. Actually, we plan on going to Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland sector of the UK is where a lot of girls are being bought in from Eastern Europe, and there's what's called break-in brothels up there, and different various factions of Russian organized crime are breaking in girls up there and then trafficking them to the rest of the UK. And there are some good groups there in the UK already that are bringing awareness to the fact. And you know, we definitely we're an organization that's not proud. We don't always have to take the lead wherever we go. If I do rescues with our teams involved with another organization or various other organizations every time we do a rescue, then something's happening that's right. It shouldn't just all be a one organization show. This problem is so big that we need a concerted effort, and that just makes good tactics. And since our SHIELD teams do tactical operations, we definitely, we need as much help as we can. We're also looking at going to all kinds of other countries. Actually, we're going to be probably headed to Greece later this year. We're looking at Germany for an invitation to do an operation there. There's various things. We're looking at Costa Rica as well. There's a lot of things out there that can be done, and even though Defender is designed where the chapters operate and look into their backyard and see what is going on around them, and not just focusing overseas, but we are not ignoring countries other than ours. We definitely get these teams, and all these different various chapters can support our overseas teams. And we are open, and we're actually looking at opening a chapter, possibly. We're reviewing status of forces agreement and looking at the willingness of these people to step forward to see how viable it is to start a chapter. But we're even looking at starting a chapter in Kuwait at the moment. So it's we're willing to work with anyone that is willing to fight this. And the problem is worldwide. We need to attack it worldwide. I don't want to just treat this as a tactical operation where we take care of everything around us and build a wall. We need to cut off the sources. We need to cut off the supply. We need to cut off the demands. We need to dice this whole thing up and let this snake die. So worldwide and our backyard, it's all our fight.
Yep. An interesting question just came through on Twitter, and then pretty soon we're probably going to have to wrap it up because we started late, I know, but still. Somebody asked, how do we prevent relationship difficulties amongst abolitionists in the abolitionist sector getting in the way of working together? Well, the abolitionists are, people that are against trafficking in whatever its forms, and there are a decent number of organizations, and I believe what they're referring to is, how do we keep relationship difficulties between those organizations from happening so that we can work together? You know what? I don't know that there's a magic answer to relational difficulties. I think what these organizations need to do, though, is put down their pride, if that is happening, and keep focused on the individuals that need help. I've found some great organizations that have reached out their hands to Ark of Hope, or we've reached out ours to theirs, and look, we've got a working relationship going with Defender organization right now. With Project for Healing Humanity, who has been hosting all of these vigils and so passionate about these things. We have a growing relationship with OABI Voices down in Trinidad, and other organizations I know, for instance, out in California. I believe it's Abolish Slavery. I haven't run into too many of these organizations that are not willing to talk and willing to share. We got to realize this is a way bigger problem than any of those organizations, and hopefully, unless they're in it just for the money and the money that they can raise and things like that, then hopefully they'll put down their pride. But that's as it is. Dan, one other person asked, what creative idea, or maybe Tracy, what creative ideas of increasing funding for combating human trafficking? There's a lot of different funding things available online, and I don't know. Do you have, Ark of Hope for Children's used some of those types of things, but I love for some people to get involved and raise funds for either one of our organizations, Dan?
Absolutely, and we're in a state right now where we're going to be asking people to commit to $25 a month for the next 6 months for operations bars that are very needed to keep our administrative costs going while we explore various grants and things of that nature that are open to us. The operations we do, since we actually, there's people out there that say they rescue, but it might be kind of metaphorical, and for a group like ours, it actually goes and gets the victims and transports them to safe shelter. There's definitely expenses involved with that, everything from our communications equipment to vehicles, gas, food, just all these things that come into play. And we believe each and every one of these victims is worth it. We follow Christ's example where we will go after the one lost lamb. It's not about numbers where that rescue isn't going to make a difference in the overall scheme. It'll make a difference for that victim, absolutely. And of course, with our goal of securing a prosecution with the rescue, we hope to make a even bigger strike. But as far as funding, we have a huge group of volunteers, and we try to keep from pulling them for funds as much as possible, because we really believe we need to reach out to corporations. We need to reach out to some bigger pockets. We need people. We have corporations and entities that will donate money for every furry animal on the planet, per se, or for various other type of things that do definitely pull at our hearts. But we're talking about children here, and when did children have to take a backstage to everything? And we're talking about children, which, I mean, in the U.S. Department of Justice database last year, you'll see there's estimated over 246,000 missing children in the U.S. alone. We should be doing something about this. So that is what I do, and I reach out, to someone from an organization does. I'm not part of the fundraising arm, but they basically put it to them. This is important. We're on a war footing. We have tens of thousands of children being stolen all the time, and it's important. It's important for you to get involved. What can you help us with? Here's some of our expenses. Here's our projected things. And you know what? If you don't exactly believe in how we do it, then we invite you to get with an organization you do believe in, because it's that important that you have to be involved somehow. And the other thing is, we don't have all the ideas. I could definitely use some. As much as these people are sending us questions, send us in some input as well. You may have the next great idea which helps fund this, which helps save someone's life. Literally, these girls have a 3 to 6 year shelf life, girls and boys, before they're dead. So getting them out of this will save a life, and getting them out is going to give pause. Now, normally, yes, we don't want to get them out and just have someone take their place. That's why we want the prosecutions. But those prosecutions are going to give other people pause about, should I get into this business when we just saw this guy's away in prison now for 20, 30 years, which we want some significant sentences as well. So the funding, I want to reach out to corporations. There are federal grants available, but there need to be more. There has to be a groundswell of people putting this as something important. Putting this that no matter if they give to other charities, no matter if they tithe, no matter if they're a good person, this is time to buy your war bonds and get involved. This is time to do what you have to, grow your victory garden. We're on a war footing. They are attacking our children, and we have to put people in the field to combat it. And that type of mentality is what we're needed to fund this battle.
That's for sure. That's I know there's other great organizations, some that we're going to be here today that couldn't be here, but I would just encourage people, if you're looking for ways to get involved, the internet provides such phenomenal resources and possibilities, and just our world has, in a sense, sort of shrunk from all the because of it. But I would say if you want to get involved and you don't know how, from whatever town you're in, you can run whatever you choose to do, whether it's bake sales and yard sales and any of that, and decide to pick up on an organization like one of ours or another one that's out there, and earmark the funds and send them to them. There's a lot of possibilities. There are a lot of online fundraising things, and boy, it's frustrating to me. For instance, Dan, I don't know if you knew we have the plan, the architectural rendering for the for Arborage, for the thing we want to build for trafficking survivors to be able to be brought to, for boys and girls, or whatever the case may be. But we put it up at the end of last year on one of the crowd fundraising sources that's online, who really was trying to do a great thing and getting a lot of organizations involved. And there's a lot of those kind of sites, but it was very frustrating that the competition that they were running, which was actually sponsored by Firefox, Mozilla Firefox, was ending today. And as of the last time I looked, Arc of Hope for Children, ours for trafficking homes, had raised under $1,000 from this, which any money we raise is wonderful. But the biggest one, the one that was in second place, was a bat sanctuary, a sanctuary for bats, which is, I'm sure it's wonderful. But I asked myself the same thing. What about our kids? That sanctuary raised over $50,000, and you know what? Maybe organizations like mine and others. Maybe we just need help with from fundraising experts and other people who just have good hearts and want to jump in and help us. So if you want to do that for Defender Foundation or for Arc of Hope for Children and our Removing Chains website that we right now is running worldwide every night, or for Sherna Benjamin's Owabi Voices, which is down in Trinidad, Tobago. I know they're always struggling and needing funds, and also for partnership. For Project for Healing Humanity. Fernanda Mejia, that's been running these vigils for the last year, has done this just out of the goodness of her heart and the hearts of people like ourselves that have tried to help make these a reality. But she's been completely unfunded and really needs people to jump in for her, for all her interviews and for travel. And she's even been going through some times of needing housing for herself. So that's for all of us. What I'll do is at the end of this video, I will put up we'll have some dead time with some just music playing, and I will put up information for how to contact each of the organizations, for how, if you're willing, if you desire to donate or get involved, perhaps volunteer in any way, that you can contact any of us. I know Dan will provide information for how to contact them as well. Perhaps you've been on this, watching this vigil, and you've been trafficked yourself. Or you've got some other questions about that, or you've been through child abuse or some of those kinds of things, and it's really shaken you some. We will have information on how to contact us, Defenders, Arc of Hope for Children, Removing Chains, all of that at the end of the video. So we can't thank you enough. Representing, of course, Jerome Elam from Washington. Washington Times Communities. Jerome, we wish you our best. We hope you get better. We know you've done some great things in promoting these videos and reaching out through your articles. We commend you as a survivor for just being a bright light for all the other survivors out there to get involved. So, again, we thank everybody for being involved. We'll close in a time of prayer. Yes, Dan, is that good for you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and if I want to encourage people that no matter what faith you are, even if you're of no faith, these people that are involved in that are victims, and this is what we're really reaching out to as victims. We're lifting up victims and survivors and the families of those people. Dan mentioned all the missing children that are out there, and obviously there's hundreds of thousands of them a year. There's a lot of families out there that have been going through great pain and great worry. So we want to lift them up in this time. So whether you pray, as we will in a minute, or you meditate, or whatever you do, I just hope that you'll take part in this time. Perhaps even just, if you've already lit a candle or you want to light a candle or have a moment of silence, we'd appreciate that. So we'll do this, and then when that's done, I'm going to let everybody say goodbye. And I will turn on some music and blank out the screen so we can have that dead time at the end. So here we go. Dan, I'm going to say a prayer or whatever, and if you want to add anything on the end, you can, or we'll just let it stop with an amen. So, God, I want to thank you for this time together. I want to thank you for the dedication of people that have attended this, like Dan and Tracy, who stepped in from Defender Foundation at the last minute. I thank you for the organizations or the people that could not be here tonight. For Fernanda herself, from Project for Healing Humanity, who's so faithfully put these different vigils on. And we pray for best things to come for her. We pray for continued growth for Project for Healing Humanity and all the things that it's trying to do in the next vigils coming up. Lord, lift up Jerome Elam, who's fighting borderline pneumonia, from what I understand. I pray for health for him, and that would come quickly. And just thank you, bless him for the way he's reached out, and to the people that he's reached out to. Lord, and I pray for Shona Benjamin from Owabi Voices down in Trinidad. Lord, she had to not be here tonight so that she could help some victimized children down there. So, Lord, we lift up all of them, Ark of Hope for Children as well, and RemovingChains.org, where this vigil is also going live right now. And, on Moving Chains, for the people that are normally going there, Lord, I pray that we will get many people that are willing to be mentors, that are willing to attempt to do this, that will put up with background checks or whatever it takes so that they can be a listening ear for people who definitely, desperately need this all over the world. I pray for enough to get involved in that so that nobody would fall through the cracks and say, gee, I showed up but nobody was there. Anyhow, Lord, lift up all of those things and the victims and survivors all around the world. I pray that if any of them are listening now, any of the survivors, you reach out. I don't know if you're already rescued, or perhaps you're not even rescued. Or perhaps this is going to touch somebody 6 months from now. There are places, organizations, people out here that care. You can contact us through our sites. We'll have numbers and things up at the end of this vigil, at the end of this video. We will not take this video down. This video will stay up and hopefully be spread around by people all over the world. We are here for you. We thank you for your strength, for your perseverance. We want to help you grow through this, and we're here and we're committed to you. So thank you. Stay strong. Anybody else who's been had memories from all this stuff, we're here for you as well. Thank you for attending. We thank God for just keeping us going in this fight for something that's so much greater than ourselves. And I thank you that even if one victim hasn't been helped, and we already know that has already happened, then this has all been worthwhile. So thank you. We pray this in God's name. Amen.
I'll just add, both Father, we just come to you united united in strength, united in purpose, Father. And Father, and just resolute with the will that you've given us and the mission you've given us, Father, to help these victims become survivors, become overcomers. Father, just ask that you be with these boys and girls and women and men and just out there right now that are in captivity, and some have given up hope, and some, there are a few that are even able to hear this, Father, and just let them know that there is help out there. They just have to reach for it. And there are groups that can work with them, and that no, not all law enforcement is just going to try to sweep it under the rug. There's some that are actively prosecuting this, and they need help, and they need the help of even you that might be listening to this. And that even if you don't, even if you've gotten to the point where you don't care what happens to you, I'm just speaking to you right now that please step forward to help those that are with you. You can be that difference. That you, if you even just seek help for yourself, that you can help out those people that are with you as well. And we need to stop these men from doing it to someone else besides you. But Father, I just also ask that you just put your blessings on each and every one of these groups that are here, and the ones that weren't able to attend, and everyone that's watching. And just help us just work together and work as a cohesive force. And yes, not have to worry about pride or who gets billed first or any of that, Father, and just please make it all about the survivors and the victims that we're going to help. And that is our purpose, and that is why we're here. And let that always be first and foremost. We ask you to keep us in your will and let us not stray from it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, I just want to thank everybody who's been involved. You know what, I want to thank you too if you don't share the same faith that we have, perhaps a different one. We're calling for tolerance in the name of the victims and survivors of trafficking and abuse. And we thank you. We thank everybody that's been part of this. We will have contact information at the end of the video, as I said before. I'm going to blank out my whatever it is, camera, and play some generic music at the end, just so that we can have some space at the end where we can do that with. So thank you everybody for attending, and especially Dan and Tracy, who stepped in at the last minute, both from Defender Foundation. Thank you for all that you've been doing. You're inspirations to me, and I'm glad we have been partnering together. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, if you guys want to mute your microphones or whatever, and I'm going to put this cloth up and play some music. So thank everybody for attending, and we'll have another vigil in a month. So take care, and bless you.